Marissa Vega had only been in Los Angeles for 3 weeks when she noticed the man in the elevator who never blinked. Darius Cole saw him too, a pale figure who always appeared on the 5th floor but never stepped out. Neither of them spoke about it at first, but when the same figure began showing up in their mirrors, in photos on their phones, and even on billboards across the city with their own names written underneath, they realized Los Angeles wasn't just alive at night, it was feeding on them. I had only lived in Los Angeles for a few months when the strangeness began, but sometimes it feels like it started the moment I first stepped into that old apartment building. The city had always fascinated me, the lights, the endless noise, the illusion of opportunity. Yet behind the glamour, there was something raw and unsettling. The street smelled of gasoline and stale heat, the nights never truly quiet, and every shadow seemed longer than it should have been. I told myself I was just adjusting, that all newcomers felt this way, but deep down I already sensed I wasn't alone. The apartment itself looked ordinary enough. Cracked walls, water stains, and a view of a half-lit neon sign that buzzed without pause. It wasn't beautiful, but it was affordable, and in Los Angeles, that was enough. The first few nights passed without event, but gradually I began to notice things. A weight in the air when I tried to sleep. The creak of the hallway outside my door at times when no one should have been walking. A strange hum in the walls that seemed louder whenever I turned off the lights. At first I laughed at myself. Big city nerves, nothing more. But the feeling of being watched was so sharp it was like breathing in smoke. It was around the second week that I saw the first real sign. I had been brushing my teeth before bed, my face pale under the weak bathroom light. In the mirror, something shifted. A shadow moved along the ceiling behind me. I spun around, heart pounding, but the room was empty. I leaned back toward the mirror, my breath fogging the glass, searching for any explanation. Nothing, just my own frightened reflection staring back. I left the light on that night, telling myself I was being ridiculous, but I didn't sleep. The elevator was another problem. It was ancient, an iron box that rattled like loose bones, with cables that whined every time someone used it. During the day it was annoying, but at night it became unbearable. Around 3 in the morning, without fail, it would start moving. I lived on the 5th floor, and I often heard it stop outside my door. The sound of the doors dragging open echoed through the hall. I never checked, never dared to peek, because every instinct told me that whatever was inside wasn't meant for me to see. One night, curiosity betrayed me. I crept to the door and looked through the peephole. At first, the hallway seemed empty under the dim light. The elevator doors stood open, their metal edges trembling. Then I saw a tear figure at the back of the elevator. Still rigid, almost blending with the shadows. I couldn't make out its face, only the shape of a body standing perfectly straight, staring into the hall as though waiting. My eyes stung, and I blinked. The door slid shut, and the hallway was once again empty. I stayed frozen at the door for what felt like hours. When I finally crawled back to bed, the silence in the apartment was worse than the noise had been. My chest was heavy with the certainty that whatever I had seen had noticed me too. The next morning, I tried to convince myself it was a trick of the light. Maybe someone drunk had stumbled into the elevator. Maybe my imagination had painted the figure darker than it was. But when I opened my door to leave for work, something stopped me cold. A folded piece of paper lay on the floor, just inside the threshold, as though slipped under the door while I slept. The paper was damp, dirty, its edges crumbling in my hands. I unfolded it slowly, already trembling, and saw 3 words written in crooked, smudged black ink. Don't look back. The warning bled into the paper, the letters trembling as if alive. I dropped it on the floor, my hands shaking uncontrollably. It wasn't just the words that terrified me. It was the simple, undeniable truth that someone or something had been inside my building, right outside my door, while I slept only feet away. I told myself I wouldn't think about it, that I would throw it away and forget. But that night, lying in the dark, the words echoed louder than the city outside. Don't look back, don't look back. My body locked in place, afraid to even roll over, as though turning the wrong way would open me to whatever waited. And just before dawn, as exhaustion finally pulled me under, I thought I felt the mattress shift, as though someone had just sat down beside me. I told myself the note was a prank, some cruel joke from a neighbor or a stranger in the building, but the more I tried to push it from my mind, the more it clung to me. The words wouldn't leave. Don't look back. They echoed every time I turned a corner, every time I walked down a crowded street, every time I stood alone in the elevator. I kept catching myself glancing behind me, quick and nervous, as if someone would be there waiting. During the day, Los Angeles felt safer. The constant noise of traffic, the endless rush of people, the glow of sunlight across glass towers, all of it created an illusion that nothing dark could reach me. But at night, the city became a different world. The lights felt colder, the alleys stretched longer, and the shadows swallowed sound. Even when surrounded by people, I felt singled out, as though something unseen moved only for me. That feeling followed me into my dreams. One night I dreamed of the elevator again. I stood at the doors as they opened, but instead of the inside of the car, there was only blackness and empty shafts stretching down forever. The cables groaned, vibrating above me, but there was no bottom, no end. I leaned forward, unable to stop myself, and just before I peered into the abyss, I felt a hand grip my shoulder from behind. I woke, gasping, clutching my chest, my shirt damp with sweat. I knew, without a doubt, that if I had turned around in that dream, I would never have woken up. The next day I stayed out as long as I could. I sat in a cafe until the staff began stacking chairs on tables, pretending I was busy with work. By the time I returned home, it was close to midnight. The hallways were silent, each step echoing too loudly against the cracked linoleum. I fumbled with my keys, every second stretching like an hour, and when I finally pushed open my door, I froze. A cold draft swept through the apartment, brushing against me like a presence moving past. The place looked normal, untouched, but the air was wrong, heavier, damper, like a cellar left sealed for years. I locked the door quickly and moved through the rooms, checking closets and corners as though expecting someone to step out. Nothing. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had entered a space already occupied. When I went into the bathroom to wash my face, I noticed something on the mirror. At first it looked fogged over, as though steam from a shower had clung to the glass, but I hadn't used hot water. My reflection wavered behind the blur, and then slowly, words began to form. Lines traced across the condensation, invisible fingers dragging letters into the mist. Don't look back. The phrase dripped down the glass, smearing into streaks of water. My throat closed, my body refusing to move. I wanted to believe I had done it somehow, unconsciously, but I knew the truth. Something else had written it, something that wanted me to see. I backed out of the bathroom and sat in the corner of my bedroom, gripping my phone like it was a weapon. I kept the screen lit, my eyes darting between the doorway and the shadows stretching across the floor. The city outside hummed faintly through the windows, but it didn't reach me here. My apartment felt sealed away from the rest of the world, like a cage built for a single purpose. At some point in the night, I heard scratching. It came from the walls, slow and deliberate. Not the frantic scamper of rats, but something with patience, dragging long nails across plaster. The sound circled me, moving from one wall to the next, until it stopped directly behind the spot where I sat. I pressed my ear to the wall, holding my breath. The scratching ceased, replaced by something worse, breathing, a steady, low rhythm, so close it was almost inside the wall itself. I couldn't stay pressed there. I bolted to the bed, buried myself beneath the blanket, and waited. Hours crawled by, my mind drifting between waking and sleep, my ears straining for the smallest sound. Eventually, silence returned, but it was the kind that felt unnatural, like the pause before something terrible revealed itself. When sunlight finally crept through the blinds, I forced myself to rise. My body ached with exhaustion, but I had survived the night. I stumbled into the bathroom, needing to splash water on my face. The mirror stood clear now, clean and harmless, but I avoided looking too long. My reflection was mine, but I no longer trusted it. On my way out the door, I nearly tripped over something on the floor. Another folded piece of paper. My stomach turned as I bent to pick it up. The handwriting was the same, jagged and shaky, but this time there was no warning, just a countdown. 3 days. The number haunted me. 3 days. It wasn't a warning anymore. It was a deadline. Every hour that passed felt like sand draining through a clock I couldn't see, and I had no idea what waited at the end. I carried the note in my pocket, unable to throw it away, as though keeping it close might give me control, but deep down I knew it meant the opposite. Something was closing in, and I was powerless to stop it. That night, I tried to stay awake. I left every light in the apartment on, the television buzzing in the background, the hum of the refrigerator grounding me. Still, exhaustion clawed at my body, and sometime after 2 in the morning, my eyes shut against my will. I woke to footsteps. At first, I thought it was the neighbors, but the sound was inside my apartment, slow, deliberate steps across the wooden floor. My throat tightened as I realized the noise was coming from the living room. I lay frozen, barely breathing, heart hammering against my ribs. The footsteps paused, then began moving toward my bedroom. I pulled the blanket over my head like a child hiding from monsters, the thin fabric doing nothing to protect me. The steps grew closer until they stopped just outside my door. I prayed for silence, for the sound to fade away. Instead, the door creaked open, inch by inch. The air shifted, colder, heavier. I didn't look. I couldn't. Time dragged. I don't know how long I stayed there, suffocating under the blanket. Eventually, sleep must have taken me again, because the next thing I remember was the pale light of morning creeping through the blinds. I sat up slowly, every nerve raw. My bedroom door was wide open. On the floor just inside the doorway, a trail of wet footprints glistened. They weren't mine. I followed them cautiously, my body shaking with each step. The prints led from my bedroom into the hall, faint smears of water on the wood, until they reached the elevator at the end of the corridor. The doors were closed, but water pooled at the seam, as if something had stepped inside only moments before. I didn't ride the elevator that day. I took the stairs, 5 flights down, nearly running. The city outside felt strange, disconnected. The sunlight seemed weaker, the people around me blurred, like I was slipping out of sync with reality. I couldn't shake the feeling that the deadline was more than just a threat, it was a promise. That night I tried again to stay awake, but terror wears the body down. At some point, I drifted into uneasy sleep, only to be jolted awake by the buzzing of my phone on the nightstand. My heart leaped. The screen glowed with a new message from an unknown number. With shaking hands, I opened it. It was a photo. The picture showed my bedroom, my bed, my blanket pulled up over my chest, my body lying still in the faint glow of the lamp. The photo had been taken only seconds earlier. My chest tightened, my breath caught in my throat. Whoever, or whatever, was sending these was inside with me, watching, standing just close enough to capture me as I slept. I sat frozen, clutching the phone, too afraid to move. The apartment was silent except for my ragged breathing. I forced myself to turn on the flashlight and scanned the room. Empty. The hallway empty. The living room empty. Yet the terror didn't fade. It grew heavier, pressing against me until I could hardly stand. When I returned to my room, another message waited. This one wasn't a photo but a single line of text. 2 days. The countdown was real. And whatever had entered my home, whatever had left wet footprints on the floor, had no intention of leaving me alone. It was watching, it was waiting, and time was running out. 2 days. The words circled in my head like a curse I couldn't escape. I carried them with me into daylight, into crowded streets, into every attempt at normalcy. No matter how many people surrounded me, I felt separated, as though I was the only one caught in some invisible web. I thought of leaving Los Angeles, of running as far as possible, but even as the idea formed, I knew it wouldn't help. Whatever was counting down wasn't tied to a place, it was tied to me. That night, the elevator returned. Its groan and rattle tore me from a restless half-sleep. I lay in bed, holding my breath, listening to the familiar drag of its doors opening on my floor. The silence afterward was worse than the noise. I imagined the figure standing in the hallway, motionless, waiting for me to acknowledge it. My body shivered under the blanket. When I finally forced myself up and pressed my eye to the peephole, the air froze in my lungs. The elevator stood open, and inside, at the far end of the car, was the figure again. But this time, I saw its face. It looked like mine. Not exactly. Its skin was pale and sagging, its eyes darker, its posture wrong, but the resemblance was undeniable. Like a mirror warped with age, like a body emptied and left hollow. My knees buckled, and I stumbled back from the door, clutching my chest to keep from screaming. When I looked again, the elevator was empty, its doors closing with a metallic sigh. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped my phone when I picked it up. I dialed a number, anyone, but cancelled before the call connected. What could I say? That I was being hunted by myself, that my reflection had stepped out of the mirror and into the world. No one would believe me. When I finally gathered the courage to open the door, the hallway was deserted. Only one thing waited for me, slipped under the door while I had been watching. A folded piece of paper, red stains smearing its surface. I didn't want to touch it, but I had to. The message inside was jagged, uneven, as though carved rather than written. It's almost time. I dropped it, heart pounding, and stumbled back inside. Every shadow in the apartment leaned toward me. Every mirror reflected something that didn't feel like me anymore. My reflection lagged in the bathroom mirror, my eyes moving a fraction of a second before its did. When I tested it, raising my hand slowly, the reflection hesitated before following. And then it smiled. I smashed the glass with my fist, shards scattering across the floor. My hand bled, crimson dripping into the sink, but I didn't care. At least now I didn't have to see it. Yet the broken pieces glinted from the tiles, each shard still holding fragments of the same awful grin. I swept them into the trash, but even in the dark, I felt them watching. The following evening, I couldn't bring myself to leave the bed. I sat clutching the knife I had taken from the kitchen, my phone glowing in my other hand. I thought maybe if I stayed awake until morning, I could survive another day. But exhaustion dug deep, dragging me under despite my fear. When I woke, it was too silence and oppressive kind that pressed on my chest. The clock read 3 in the morning. My phone screen lit up with a new message, and I stared at it through blurred eyes. Another photo. This time, not just me asleep. It was me sitting in bed, awake, holding the knife. My head tilted slightly, my mouth curved into that same hollow smile. I dropped the phone and staggered backward, the knife trembling in my hand. The room was empty, but I no longer trusted my own senses. I no longer trusted myself, because the truth pressed in on me from all sides. It wasn't he just watching me anymore. It was becoming me, and I had one day left. I left the apartment that morning with nothing packed and everything broken. Mirrors were gone. The bathroom light hung from bare wires, and the hollow echo of my own footsteps sounded like someone else's. I thought running would help. That if I put enough distance between me and that cold hallway, the warnings and the photos and the wet footprints might stop following. Los Angeles swallowed me up anyway, a bright mouth that never closed. For a few hours, the noise steadied me. People moved around me like waves, and for a moment I forgot the countdown. Then I saw it, high above sunset, and the air left my lungs in a slow, dull ache. My face hung from a billboard the size of a building, blown up and wrong eyes too deep. Smiles stretched too wide, skin the color of old paper. The words beneath it read the same as the others. Don't look back. My heartbeat spiked because I realized the photos were no longer private. They had become the city's advertisement for something I could not name. Drivers stared at it without blinking. A man took a picture of it and posted it on his phone as if photographing a sunset. No one panicked. No one ran. Only I felt naked under that enormous, watching version of myself. I tried to think logically. Maybe someone had stolen my likeness and made a tasteless campaign. Maybe it was a viral prank. Maybe I was too tired to think straight. But the phone in my pocket buzzed, and the screen lit with a new message from an unknown number. The image was simple. My bed, the blanket tossed aside, the imprint of a body still warm. The timestamp said it had been taken 4 minutes ago. My stomach dropped to ice. The photo showed the angle from the closet, a place I had never left unlocked. I ran until my lungs burned and my shoes skidded on wet pavement. I didn't know where I was going, only away from the billboards and the faces. I ended up at the subway station, because the underground felt like an escape. The stairwell smelled of oil and old rain. The platform under the city's skin was a hollow mouth lined with tiles, and for a moment I felt small enough to disappear. Then the sound started. The old elevator in the far corner of the station, metal grinding like a throat. It wasn't the trains. It was the lift I had first heard back in my building. It came from nowhere and everywhere at once, a slow, inevitable thing. I told myself I would not look back. The words had become a litany. I used to hold myself steady. I walked to the edge of the platform and stood facing forward, chin down, breath measured. The footsteps approached from behind. Slow, soft, the pads of feet dragging like wet cloth. They stopped just behind me, less than a foot away. I kept my eyes on the tracks. I felt a pressure at the base of my skull, as if someone leaned close enough to press their mouth to my ear. The air there tasted like pennies in old paper. My body hummed with terror and, strangely, with a need to know. For a long second I fought the impulse to turn. The countdown had taught me one lesson. Looking back invited something in. I had obeyed that lesson for days, and obedience had not saved me. Something warm and heavy settled against my shoulders, like a coat being draped over me. My hands went numb. I tried to move them, they trembled, and then obeyed someone else. A weight, not my own, guided them to my pockets, and my fingers closed around my phone. I watched my hands lifted up and unlock it. The screen opened to the photo album without my permission, and the first image filled the glass. It was a picture of me asleep. The photo was older, from weeks ago, but as I watched, the image shifted. The face in that sleeping photo began to change, smoothing, hollowing, the smile widening until it matched the face on the billboards. My hands scrolled on their own. New photos appeared, stacked like a deck. Me standing at the bus stop, me reading at a cafe, me buying coffee, me sleeping, me in the shower. Each image had been taken moments before they appeared on my screen. In every one, my expression grew more blank, more staged, until I could not tell whether I was the model or the subject. Then my phone vibrated with a new alert. A photo was being taken right now. The image resolved slowly, with that sick clarity a camera brings. It showed the platform behind me. It showed the shadow at my back. And then the phone's shutters clicked again, and the new photo filled the screen. I was in the picture, but I was not the one taking it. The person captured in the frame was empty-eyed, smiling into the camera with my face stretched into that impossible grin. Behind that smiling figure, reflected in the subway tiles, were dozens of faces all like mine, all captured at the moment they'd been replaced. My chest felt as though something had unstitched it and left a hollow where my heart had been. I tried to speak, to call out a warning, but a hand, my hand, smoothed the hair at the back of my neck. Its fingers were cold and long, and they smelled faintly of the ink from the notes. The grip eased and the weight shifted. I felt myself pulled forward, walking, compelled by a force that knew my steps. The elevator's doors opened with a sigh, and the light inside was the color of old film. I stepped in because my feet would not stop. Inside the cab stood a row of mirrors, and in each reflection someone else looked back at me, someone wearing my face. They smiled with patient mouths, and in their eyes I saw the faint glow of all the photos they had sent. I glanced down at my hands. The skin was still mine, but the nails had turned the color of gutters, and the lines on my palms mapped places I had never been. The doors began to close. For a terrible perfect second, I imagined I could break them, smash the glass, run back into the platform and the noisy dark. Then the lift moved. The world tilted, the light smeared, and as the floor dropped away I felt a click inside my head like a lock turning. My last clear thought, cleaner, sharper than any fear before, was that I had never been the thing they wanted me to become. I had been the tool, the camera, the hand that left the notes. The phone in my pocket vibrated once more. A new image flashed on the screen. It was taken from inside the elevator, from behind me, and in the center of the frame my face smiled directly at the lens. The caption scrawled below, in handwriting I recognized as my own, read simply, "Thank you."